Hey, and welcome. In this video, I'm going to be talking about Isle Delfino, not one particular part of Isle Delfino, the whole island, because for me, Isle Delfino in and of itself is a huge part of what makes Super Mario Sunshine such an interesting experience. Isle Delfino stands out within the Mario series as a space that is incredibly realistic compared to what you would find in a lot of other Mario games. When you look at Mario 64 that came before Super Mario Sunshine, the castle world was not really connected to any of the worlds that you jumped into. It felt like you were going to a different space completely, and so everything that happened in the castle had a big disconnect on what was going on in the paintings that you jumped into. Whereas with Isle Delfino, you are very much part of a larger story being told here. The island itself is a character that you slowly reveal and get to see more of. Different cultures exist on this island and they all don't interconnect as smoothly as you might imagine. So people you see on one side of the island might not be the same people that you see on the other side of the island. It gives the game a very interesting dynamic where you're moving between all these different spaces that feel very similar in terms of aesthetic, but they play out in very different ways. In the central plaza here, for example, everyone's more about the tourist face of things. Everyone's kind of annoyed about the tourists that are going to be scared off by the stars not coming. The people seem genuinely annoyed that the day-to-day business is being disrupted by the antics of, well, who they think is Mario, but ultimately it's not. And what I really like about the plaza area here is it has that sort of chill vibe going on for it, where you don't feel like anything dangerous can really happen here, and everyone's just kind of trying to get on with the day. As you start out the game, it's pretty dark, it's shadowy because the sun doesn't shine on the central plaza and everyone's pretty miserable because of it. But once you start peeling back the sun and getting the stars back into the space, it becomes a bit more fun and you begin to sort of see this plaza for what it actually is, a really fun and very nice space to hang out in. It's beautifully crafted in my opinion. There's plenty of rooftops for you to run along, there's plenty of towers that hide stars within and other secrets. There's a fully working underground system where you can run around and you can have a good time just exploring. It's really chill, it's really fun, and the times when chaos is brought here by the actions of others within the story, it makes it feel all the more dramatic because you're not used to seeing that level of chaos in this space. The plaza basically serves as the heart of Isle Delfino, and you can tell this because when you look out across the water there, you can see the other levels that you'll be heading towards. I really love the fact that the developers of this game went out of their way to make it very clear you are in a bigger island. You're not leaving the island to go elsewhere, and at no point in this game, outside of the spaces where you go to the weird puzzle places without your flood, you don't actually leave the island. You are here 100% of the time. And like I said at the opening of the video, that is an inverse to how Mario 64 played out and how future Mario games would play out, because a lot of future Mario games didn't really take that idea any further. But why do this? Why create a cohesive world that doesn't really lean into all of the Mario trappings that people probably expected? I mean, when this game came out, a lot of people didn't like the fact that it didn't feel like a true successor to Mario 64. It felt like its own beast, and one of the reasons I feel it is looked down on by some Mario fans is because it wasn't the experience that many people were hoping for. But I would argue that what is here is incredibly fun regardless. The locations in Super Mario Sunshine, they completely immerse the player in ways that I think a lot of games around this time simply didn't bother to try. Everything that is catered to making you feel like you are living in this breathing world. Everything is interconnected. The music, it feels soothing. The antics of the villagers, they're angry at first, but they slowly soften towards Mario as he works to help them out. And as you can see here, we're riding on these boards. It's just chill, it's fun, and it's a way to make this feel alive without actually having to do all that much. The clear blue waters that surround the plaza, they're lovely to look at, and it's really fun to dive into the water because it feels satisfying. Everything in this plaza is created to make the player feel like they are on a vacation away from the normal, and I think that that is one of the reasons why people who don't like this misunderstand what this game is trying to achieve. This is about a deep connection between the player, Mario, and the location in which the game is taking place. It's about caring for these people on this island and trying to help them out, while also coming to appreciate the beauty of what this island brings to the table. This isn't about going to snow-filled lands or going to dry deserts like you do in other Mario games. This is about creating a bond between the player and the world in which they're experiencing the game. Isle Delfino intentionally goes out of its way to get rid of those traditional Mario trappings, and instead of just having desert lands or having lands filled with snow or areas in the clouds, everything here just feels that bit more realistic. It feels like a space that is being lived in by the characters and that you are visiting on your holidays. As I said, one of the things that I really love is that no matter where you are within the game, you can always look out in a certain direction and you'll see the rest of the island. And what this does, it creates the sense that even when you're not in those spaces, the characters that you see there are still living out their lives. For example, we're looking across the bay here, we're seeing the plaza that we were just at, but it also gives the game the opportunity to show you places that you've not yet visited. For example, when we look out across the water, we can see a hotel that we will not be visiting for quite a while in the game. There's the bay with all of the docks and all the ships and such. That's another space that we've not yet visited, and it's just really nice that the player gets to take in these landmarks without having to actually go to them yet. It makes everything feel like it exists with a purpose, and I think that that's something Mario Sunshine does really well. Compared to other Mario games, I feel like this is probably one of the few times in the Mario series where people actually get the opportunity to feel like Mario exists within a very real world. And I think that's one of the things that Isle Delfino manages to achieve, where other Mario games don't really get close to, in my opinion. It's just one of those things that I think helps to create immersion, but I also think the stylings of Isle Delfino are really fun. For example, we are in a theme park here. There's rides, there's excitement, there's kids running around, there's various things going on. The music is very festive, it's jovial, and I just love the fact that this is a huge contrast to other spaces that we'll be exploring. It feels like this is a tourist hotspot. This is where people who are visiting Isle Delfino would come to visit because this is a lovely day out in the sun where people get to enjoy all the things going on. And I just love the fact that even in this space, you can have fun with the entertainment and you can use the rides. There's a big Ferris wheel which acts as one of the huge landmarks. There's a roller coaster that you can actually jump onto where you can shoot rockets to hit the balloons, and it even helps with a mini boss fight when you first arrive here. You can see the swinging ship in the center of it all. You can go onto that and actually stand and have a good laugh if you really want to. This space isn't just asking you to collect shine sprites and to go through the various targets. It wants you to take in this world. It wants you to take in the entertainment here and understand why people would want to visit in the first place. It's fun, it's furious, and it just looks gorgeous. This is actually one of my favorite places to come and just hang out whenever I'm playing Super Mario Sunshine. The vibes of this place are just so welcoming and so much fun. And the fact that you even get to go to the top of the large Ferris wheel here. I don't know if you call it a Ferris wheel technically, but that's what I'm going to call it for the purposes of this. And the fact that you can see this spinning when you're in other locations as well, it just feels really nice. It also gives the player some curiosity to ponder over, because when you see these other spaces, you are drawn to them. You want to go and visit the hotel. You want to go and see what's making that bright light over there. You want to go and play in the docks because it looks really interesting. All of it as well is in the shadow of Corona Mountain, which is a space that you will eventually meet, and the game does implicitly make it clear you will be going there. I do think it's a bit of a disappointment that Corona Mountain isn't a more interesting space, and perhaps that's one of the casualties of Super Mario Sunshine's very awkward development cycle. But the game doesn't just lean on one aesthetic. When you explore different spaces, there are different moods that are created, and this helps to perpetuate the idea that all of these different parts of the island are going through different traumas. For example, here at the hotel, when you arrive, the hotel has been submerged in goo and you have to fight off a bunch of eels before you even get to enter the location. It means that you have to work really hard just to gain access to it. But the joy is that as you complete each of the missions, you get to enjoy these spaces more and more. When you come here at the final star, for example, just look how sun-kissed this space is. This feels like a genuinely relaxing place now. All that hard work that you've put in makes this space feel safe, it feels interesting, and it just makes like the game just feels so unique because you're being rewarded not just with physical items and objects, but you're also being given these spaces to actually enjoy and indulge in. Because remember, this is supposed to be a holiday for Mario and his crew of people. This isn't meant to be work, and once you get to clearing out these spaces, you get to really enjoy what these spaces would actually be like if Bowser Jr. wasn't running around causing an absolute chaos. And that's something that I genuinely appreciate about all of this. I know that Mario 64 and other Mario games do this as well, but I feel it's more pronounced in Mario Sunshine because the island is in absolute chaos when you arrive and everyone's angry at you, but as that tone shifts, it just begins to feel like you're being welcomed in by the people. Your actions carry weight through the discussions that you have with the locals and just being able to actually enjoy these spaces for what they are. But not everything within Mario Sunshine has that hyper-connected feel to it. When you come to Noki Bay, for example, it is arguably the most detached of the locations within the island, and this is where I feel that rushed development cycle and the issues that came up in it really hurt the game that we got in the end, because I get the suspicion that we were supposed to get a lot more from this kind of vibe. The people on this side of the island are very different to what we saw back in the plaza, and I feel like there was a lot more potential here. When you come to Noki Bay, it feels a lot more calmer, it feels a lot more chill. You get to see a lot of different color palettes at play. It's not a super tropical sun-kissed area, but it feels a bit more rugged, it feels a bit more secluded from what else is going on in the island. This doesn't feel like a tourist hotspot. It feels more like this is where people on the island just want to be left alone, and it does feel light years away from the plaza and the theme park at Pina Park that we were just at. And that's the kind of contrast that I really welcome within Mario Sunshine. It doesn't all feel like a tourist hotspot. It feels like spaces on this island are reserved to the people that live there, and maybe there could have been potential to explore this, I feel, and it is a real shame to me that we don't really get to see much more outside of this one particular level set from these people, because I think that what's on offer here is really, really nice. It's really different in terms of architecture and design, and it is something that I genuinely do appreciate is actually in the final game, because I do love this space very much. I also think that each of the spaces have their own identity, and that ultimately helps to make the island feel more fleshed out. If each of these spaces were just copycats or very derivative of each other, I think that it would get very boring very quickly. But what I think the developers really did well is they took a lot of the similar ideas. For example, a lot of these are on beachfronts, so there's beaches usually in most of these spaces, and they found different ways to expand upon that. Here at Gelato Beach, for example, you find the Panatas are a bit more focused on what they're up to in their local community. At the end of all of it, there is a giant watermelon festival. They're more interested in talking about what's going on with the tower at the centre of it all, with the sandbird and the goings on there. They're not overly concerned about the tourist hotspots like the plaza or the fun fair, because to them it's a different world, and when you're in this space it does feel like you are in a much more secluded and tranquil spot. When you're exploring these areas, there are just some defunct spaces like this, for example, that for the most part don't really serve any purposes, but when you come back here in some stars, you get to see that these spaces actually do have purpose. You can see that a lot of the people that live around here, they'll come here to act as a community and just have a generally nice time. The spaces here are not just being created for video game purposes, they're being created, like I said, for the showcase of what these people are actually doing during their downtime, and I really, really like that. It also goes against the central design philosophy of Mario 64. Mario 64's worlds are really fun to explore, but not many of them actually feel like real spaces that anyone could inhabit. They just feel like they've been created for video game purposes. And with Mario Sunshine, you really get the sense that the developers were evolving that philosophy to try and expand what Mario could be. And I do think they picked this back up in Mario Odyssey, because some of the worlds in Mario Odyssey have a lot of inhabitants that you can interact with, and they generally just add flavor to the worlds. I feel like the inspiration for that directly comes from Mario Sunshine, and just the desire to make the world feel a little bit more inhabited, which sometimes you don't really get when you play some of the Galaxy games. Creating all of these different feelings, it's very difficult, in particular at the time. A lot of games weren't really focused on creating coherent worlds that felt like they were interconnected and that you were exploring. Video games in the early 2000s were still very much focused on giving you that kind of video game experience. They weren't particularly interested in giving you an overall vibe, and it's one of the reasons why I think Mario Sunshine's level design is slightly ahead of the curve in terms of where the trends in video games were at the time, because it doesn't feel video gamey. It doesn't feel like you're here just to play a game. The game wants you to have an experience, and like I said earlier on, it does this not just through the level design, but through the use of music. The fact that Flood will follow you through each of the levels, and your ability to move and how you do so through all the levels, it's largely unchanged. It feels like a very consistent experience, which I think may be one of the things that people took great umbrage with. When you look at some of the great Mario games, you get power-ups that you're allowed to make use of, and it changes the way that you approach these spaces. Yet in Mario Sunshine, you don't really get that. You get different nozzles for Flood, but it never feels truly transformative, I would say. Other than getting the rocket nozzle and being able to shoot yourself up high to get up to some higher locations, and being able to use the turbo nozzle to run as fast as you can and also move through water a lot quicker, really the power-up selection in this game is non-existent, and it's another choice that goes against the grain in the Mario series. And I can understand why for some people it feels very jarring. This world hasn't been created to showcase power-ups. The island itself is a character, and it's playing a large role in how you experience this Mario game. It's one of the few times, I would argue, where Mario as a platformer is secondary to the setting, because even though this game does have platforming sections and you do lose Flood, so you have to rely on that, for example in that cave over there, I do feel that is very secondary to the actual setting of Isle Delfino. It's one of the few times in the Mario series where I feel that is a genuine thing that happens. At the end of the day, Isle Delfino, its inhabitants and its many locations are just so charming. When you see the inhabitants playing in the water like this, when you see them just dancing around and having just an absolutely great time after all the work you put in to make the island better, after all the incidents that go on, it really just makes you feel welcome in this world. It's one of those few video game spaces that I genuinely find myself wanting to return to, not to play the core gameplay, but just to sit around and enjoy the vibes. Mario Sunshine, in my opinion, may not be the best gameplay experience in the Mario series, and I will openly say that. Flood is a very divisive figure in the Mario series, and we've never really gone back to experience that kind of thing. But when you come into Mario Sunshine and you see this art style, which in my opinion is still pretty timeless in the modern times, it holds up incredibly well. In particular, if you play the re-releases on Nintendo Switch, or you upscale it in Dolphin, I really do feel like a lot of great choices were made with Sunshine, and a lot of the critiques around it really just come from the fact that this was a game that was trying its best to do something different, to step out of the Mario fold, and in doing that, it created such a unique experience. A lot like with Majora's Mask. Like I said in the Majora's Mask video, when you're in Clocktown, it feels like you're just in a different kind of space from anywhere else in the Legend of Zelda series. And when you're on Isle Delfino, no matter where you are on the island, you just feel welcome. You feel excited and intrigued by what's going on. These people, they grow on you. These locations, they become your second home from home. And the interactions that you have with the natives, the fact that you get to have some really fun moments where you're collecting fruit or you're riding Yoshi around or you're just doing any number of things that are just unique to this game. I just find myself entranced by it. And yeah, like I said, the core gameplay loop isn't the best in the Mario series in terms of versatility. It doesn't have the power-ups, it doesn't have Mario's long jump ability, and it doesn't have a lot of the things that I think people really loved about Mario platformer games. But then when you come to Isle Delfino, all that just kind of disappears for a while. You just love being around these people, around this music, around this integrated world that feels special and interesting. And it's a game that even all these years later, I find myself just booting up just to be a part of this world for an hour or two. And I'll be honest as well, I'm pretty happy that it wasn't included in Odyssey. I feel that even though Mario Sunshine is such a unique experience, I think it would have been watered down had the whole island just not been included in what Odyssey was trying to do, and I don't think it would have fit within the scope of what that game was trying to achieve. I think Isle Delfino very much deserves to be experienced in this form because it feels like just a great place to be and the vibes are right, and I just find myself really enjoying everything that this island has to offer, and it is definitely one of my favorite places in any Super Mario game across all generations. It just leaves that much of an impression. And I understand in this video I might not have been able to fully crack the analytical side of why I feel that way about this place, but I feel very passionate about the fact that Isle Delfino is a special place within video games. The vibes, the music, the feels, and everything this island conjures up, I think it's just unique to this. And I have to say, it's one of my favorite places to come and hang out in any video game ever. I would love to know what your thoughts are on Isle Delfino though. Is it a place that you like to go back and experience on your own time? Or do you feel that Mario Sunshine just isn't for you overall? Do you feel that the experience just isn't what you want from a Mario game and that Isle Delfino doesn't do enough to bridge that gap? Do let me know in the comments, and thank you so much for watching.